Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this lovely sunny blue sky Wednesday. Welcome to BDC Bite Size. This morning we have Sarah Pagram presenting Teaching to the Top, supporting learners to reach distinction status. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Sarah Pagram.
Thank you, Errol. What a beautiful introduction. So yes, that's quite right. This morning, guys, we're looking at Teaching to the Top, supporting learners to get distinction. So the session outcomes today are to firstly explore what Teaching to the Top means in practice, in case some of you are out there not sure quite what that means. To recognise what distinction level thinking looks like, both in practical and theoretical learning, and to give you some simple strategies to promote higher level thinking in your teaching. So without further ado, let's look at the framework. There she is. And in case you're wondering, today I really think it covers planning and sequencing learning activities and assessment and learning checks. Now, again, like my last bite-sized session, it's not to say you personally will reach expert practices if you do Teaching to the Top, although it does kind of lean towards a kind of more autonomous way of learning, but it's just to get us really thinking about our practice. And neither am I saying this morning that by teaching to the top and helping our learners achieve distinctions that they're all just magically going to get them. That's not really what I mean, but it's about us really embedding those skills to give our learners the best shot. So it's not a magic wand, but it is a helping hand. Why are we doing this morning? Well, as ever, we aim to give you kind of a short, sharp session, 15 minutes only. We hope that it's high quality, and we also hope that you'll take something away with it at the end. Okay, so what is Teaching to the Top? Well, I shall tell you. So it's not about just teaching to our highest achieving learners, and that will only widen the gap between the lowest and the highest and make that kind of more noticeable. What it is about is having high aspirations and expectations for every learner in your class, and then by using your scaffolding techniques, supporting those learners that are maybe at the bottom of your class to reach your high expectations. So that's what it's about. It's not just about ignoring the people that are maybe struggling. So what does distinction thinking look like? Well, here's a little something for you to think about. I've got two tasks here. Task A is describe 3 causes of climate change. Now, this could be a little starter activity. You did climate change last week. You're going to just recap it this week. Or we've got task B, which is evaluate which cause of climate change is most significant and justify your answer. I'm going to give you 1 moment to think about which task A or task B, invites decision making. So is it task A or task B? And the answer is, ta-da, task B. Of course it's task B. So task B doesn't just ask learners just to simply know something or recall information, which I think is sometimes a trap we can fall into when we're doing maybe starter activities, just to kind of recall and recap previous learning. But task B invites our learners to weigh the evidence, make a judgment, and justify their reasoning. And for those of us that are teaching on courses that have past merit distinction, we know weighing evidence, making judgments, and justifying reasoning are all things that are expected at distinction. Okay, to make it a little bit clearer for you, I'm going to look at Bloom's taxonomy. Now, I know some people think this is a little bit old hat and a little bit old school, but I really like it as a piece of theory, and I always use it with trainees, as I hope some of them are on the call and they can tell you. So Bloom's taxonomy was developed by Benjamin Bloom in 1956 and was reworked in 2001 to involve create or creating right at the top. Now, as you can see at the bottom, for those of you that maybe don't know, Bloom's taxonomy is used to help us design and create our learning outcomes. And why I like this so much is you can see that if we just have learning outcomes that are just simply at the bottom of the triangle here, so remembering, understanding, we can kind of judge that we've only just kind of pitched the lesson at pass level. You know, it's not going to be particularly challenging for our learners. However, if we have lots of creating going on at the top, lots of evaluating and analysing, we can assume that our lesson is pitched more at a distinction level. And just to kind of give you some more ideas on this, here we are. So what we call the top level of thinking, we call it higher order thinking. When we're creating our lesson outcomes, we use command verbs at the start, don't we? So if I was pitching a kind of a pass level lesson, the activities that I might use might get learners to describe, identify, explain, or just kind of demonstrate some kind of simple understanding. If I'm going to use command verbs that are pitched at a distinction level. The type of activities I might ask my learners to do are to analyse something, to evaluate something, to make a justification or apply critically skills, knowledge or behaviours. So that's why I like Bloom. I think it's really clear for us to see where we're pitching our lessons. We really you want a range of things in there, but today's focus is really the distinction level. So just remember, past responses to tasks will only demonstrate a simple understanding, or maybe even if someone can just remember something from the last lesson, just literally like rote learning. Distinction responses will show analysis, evaluation, and judgment. So just kind of hold on to that. But I know what you're thinking. We don't just do theoretical units, or the units that a lot of us are delivering aren't just purely theoretical. There's also skills involved with those as well. So you can also do distinction level teaching in practical units as well. So what does that look like? Well, we're going to look at competency. So teaching to the top in practical classes, we have to demonstrate a professional standard, not the minimum standard to do something. So when teaching a practical skill, we should aim to demonstrate what excellence looks like through our practical demonstration and modelling. So we're not just going to give a pass level demonstration, we're going to give the distinction level demonstration of something, even if it's really difficult. Someone that used to teach dance, I know that could be quite exhausting. Explain what a distinction level performance should look like and include. So give them that detail. You know what the criteria is. They might not be very clear. So as you're demonstrating, show them, you know, if you can get a distinction if you show me this, this, and this. And then what I like to think about as well is those kind of small details that will instill professionalism. What is expected in your particular industry? What's the standard? Or what are you going to expect? And those little things are really going to prepare our learners for not just getting distinctions, but the most important thing, for jobs and employment and progression. Okay, so just as an example, so at a pass level, say we were doing music performance and the learners had to perform a piano piece. If I gave a demonstration on the piano and I simply talked about and demonstrated getting the correct notes, rhythm and tempo, learners might only be able to replicate performing the notes accurately. So their success criteria would just be, can I hit the most notes? Is it a recognizable rhythm? Can I perform the piece from start to finish? So it's just feels like a bit tick boxy, which is fine, they can pass, but that's all my demonstration of it and my explanation of it has allowed the students to achieve. If I was to give a distinction level demonstration of performing a short piano piece, I might show and discuss phrasing, dynamic light and shade, tonal control, expressive timing. Then the learners might focus on in their performance musical quality and interpretation, and something which always made me smile in a Pearson distinction level criteria, performing with artistic flair. Which I still don't know what that really means, but it's in there. And the success criteria would be controlled dynamics, expressive phrasing, consistent tone, musical interpretation. So it goes beyond just simply hitting the notes. It's about their performance and the nuance of the performance as well. So I hope that's clear for you in that example. Then we need to think about, so once they've done the distinction level performance or they've tried and you've modeled it and they've had a go, you then want to bring the distinction level thinking into this. So once the practical is complete, you then need to use your probing questioning to get students to evaluate and make those critical judgments. So this is where the distinction thinking comes in. You might ask, for example, given the last example I gave, where should the musical phrase naturally rise and fall? Again, they're having to use their problem solving skills to figure this out. Which section should be played more softly to create contrast? And how could you interpret this piece differently? So I know that I've used kind of music there as an example, but it translates across to all curriculum areas that are hitting these pass merit distinction criteria. Again, just getting the learners to kind of think a bit more deeply rather than simply asking, oh, do you think that went well? Yes or no. So things you can embed in your teaching today. So when you log off a bite size, these are things you can think about as you go about your day. So do your hardest thinking first. So start the lesson with a big thinking question instead of just simply recalling learning. So kind of what I was saying at the beginning. So for example, from health and social care, if I was to ask a big thinking question, I might say to them, we're going to recap safeguarding that we did in the previous session. Which safeguarding procedure is the most important in protecting vulnerable individuals and why? That's a higher order thinking question. A lower order thinking question might be describe safeguarding procedures, which is a fair question, but it's not getting those learners thinking straight away. So maybe just think before you go into your next lesson to get the hardest thinking first done. Then we want to model excellence. So you can't produce a distinction level performance unless you can see it. So we have to model distinction level ourselves by providing exemplar assignments that have received distinction grades in the past. I think it's also kind of worth giving them a past one as well so they can see the difference. Giving model answers to things, and then by your demonstration that models excellence or the professional standard in whatever subject you're in. And then one challenging task. So rather than thinking about, now this is slightly controversial, don't come for me, that rather than having a series of differentiated tasks, and we know what that looks like, we have a task and then we give an extension task to the higher ability that finish early, and maybe we don't notice they finished early, so they're just all sitting there chatting and having a lovely time, that we have one really challenging task, and then we support our lower ability level learners with scaffolding, tutor-led demonstrations, and coaching and questioning that lead learners through the stages of practice. We guide them, we support them. So those, I think, are nice kind of simple things we could embed in our teaching today, tomorrow, and way into next week and beyond. Things to think about. My final thought, got a little quote for you here. Teaching to the top does not mean only using one particular pedagogical approach or including challenging tasks as an add-on to your lesson plan. Most importantly, it's about applying an inspirational mindset to everything we do in the classroom and to our perceptions of students' capabilities. And I couldn't agree more. And to that end, guys, that's it from me. Here with the learning team, you know who we are, you know where we are. Please do pop up and see us if you need any help or support. And thank you. Right, I'm going to bring you back in, Errol.
Excellent session, Sarah, and a really good reminder of just the simple things that we can do to really raise the performance of our students to help them to achieve, no pun intended, but to get to the top of their performance, and it's quite interesting. It ties in directly with skills competitions, the whole aspect of going from competence to excellence and allowing them to see what does industry standard excellence look like, and it ties directly in with what we're talking about with teaching to the top. And just reminded me as well, like a lot of the grading criteria when we're looking to assess, within these skills competitions as well, it will have the dialectic of judgments and measurements. So when you're looking at artistic flair, for example, in the criteria, that's like a professional judgment, from the lecturer. There's no comments in the chat, so on that thought, I think we've all got this afternoon BDC Essentials training in the conference room at 3 o'clock, so hopefully we'll see you all there. Otherwise, thank you again, Sarah Pagram, for an excellent session, and I'll see you guys during the day. Take care.
See you
Bye-bye.
later. Bye-bye.